I say let's just take that. Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting first. 4:02. If we can please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please take roll.
And Vice Chair Brannon.
Here.
Director Brown.
Here.
Director Halbert.
Present.
Director Rosie. Present. Director Kipp.
Here.
And Director Testa. Here. And Chair Hernandez.
Present.
Do you have a form?
All right, we'll go ahead and go on to item number 3, which is our public comment. Any members of the audience may address the board of directors on any matter within the general subject matter. If they can address the board of directors, they will have 3 minutes to speak. Do we have any public comment?
I didn't receive any public comment for agenda item 3. Either via email or there's nobody there in person for that.
Or just the director?
If you want it on number 5 now or later.
That's what I was gonna say. We do have public comment for agenda item 6.
Then we'll take that public comment at item 6.
Okay.
All right. So moving right along, we will go on to our item number 4, November Tri-Valley Accessible Advisory Committee minutes.
And Vice Chair Singer will be giving you your update. I think she should be joining us remotely.
I'm familiar. Donna, you can go ahead and speak now.
Hi, how are you? I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great. For some reason, I'm doing this on my cell phone and I don't know why my computer wouldn't take Zoom today, but it didn't. So we met at our last meeting. We discussed. Now, I'm really unprepared because I had the minutes and then I have lost them. I don't know what happened. Can you put them up on the screen, Jennifer?
Speak through the minutes, Donna, if that is okay. This is Christy Wagoner.
Yeah.
Printed in front of me. So maybe you can expand.
Okay.
So the TAC met on Wednesday, November 1st. There was a presentation on the Wheels in Motion outreach campaign where we informed the TAC that scenario 3 was most favored by those who took the survey, and that we would be having, once approved by the board, a public hearing on December 4th. The TAC also received an update from Rosa Noya from County Connection on the regional 1-seat ride, along with a promotional video. And the TAC received their usual PAPCO report, and there were no service updates or concerns that were raised during the TAC meeting. So Donna, that summarizes the minutes, and I'll let you expand as you see fit.
Yes, we did exactly what you said on the minutes, and there wasn't very much discussion. There was a few comments from personal experiences that some of the members had complaints about service, but they were addressed at the meeting. Any questions? I don't really have much to say.
Any questions from the board for Donna? All right, we don't have any questions. Thank you, Donna, we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I'll be signing off.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Donna.
We will move on to our consent agenda, with 2 items, minutes of November 6th, and also the treasurer's report from October 23rd. We have a motion, anyone else? Second. Okay, we have a motion, a second. Please take roll.
Yes, Vice Chair Brennan.
Aye.
Director Brown.
Aye.
Director Howard.
Aye.
Director Josie. Aye. Director Tick.
Aye.
Director Testa.
Aye.
Chair Hernandez.
Aye.
Motion passes, and I just wanted to be on the record that we had no public comments about it.
All right, thank you. We will go on to our public hearing to consider changes to wheels, fixed route bus service routes and schedule. And so at this time, the board will receive a brief staff report and conduct a public hearing for the purpose of considering proposed wheels bus service changes as a part of the Wheels in Motion public outreach campaign. I would like to ask the staff for a brief background of this hearing.
Thank you, Chair Hernandez. Good afternoon, board members. LAVTA staff has taken significant steps to advertise the public comment period and today's public hearing and have received a handful of public comments to date. The purpose of today's hearing is to receive testimony on the service changes that, if adopted, would be effective in March 2024. LAVTA's Wheels in Motion project lead, our Director of Operations, Michael Tobin, will give you a brief overview of the service changes that have been discussed with the community. Following this briefing, LAVTA's Director of Customer Experience, David Mark, will describe all the ways that staff has made outreach to the public in order to solicit comments and concerns for today's public hearing. With that.
Good afternoon. So as Christy mentioned, I'll just be giving a brief overview and summary of changes under this proposed scenario. So with regards to weekday services, we'll be making some frequency adjustments. Specifically, we'll be increasing service on Route 15 to run every 20 minutes during rush hours or peak hours, as we call them, and hourly during the midday or off-peak. We'll also be slightly decreasing peak service on routes 1, 3, 8, and 14 to run every 40 minutes. And on routes 10R and 30R to run every 20 minutes. Additional changes to weekday service, we'll be operating the routes 10R service for 1 additional hour, so extending the service band until midnight. We'll also be introducing local service in Central Dublin, as well as Southwest Livermore for every 40 minutes during extended peak hours. We will resume hourly service on Route 2 in East Dublin. We'll resume limited peak service to East Livermore on Route 11. We'll resume limited peak express service on Route 580X between downtown Livermore and Park. And then finally, we'll extend Route 70X to the Hoscana Business Park. With regards to weekend service for frequency adjustments, we'll be increasing service on 10R to run every 20 minutes on Saturday and every 40 minutes on Sunday. We will be increasing service on Route 30R to run every 40 minutes on Saturdays and continue to run hourly on Sundays. And finally, we'll be adding Central Dublin local service, which will operate every 40 minutes during the daytime on Saturdays. That includes all of the changes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Mark. I'm the Director of Customer Service, and I'm going to walk you through the types of media notices that we presented for public hearing. So LAVTA used a variety of multilingual methods to solicit feedback on proposed service changes for the community. Announcements to notify the public including print media with publications of record, radio advertising, the website, in social media, collateral distribution at local libraries, senior centers, and city halls, notices on board buses, displays at the LAVTA corporate offices and transit centers, and a general press release was also issued. For published media, we had a notice announcing public hearing with Pleasanton Weekly and the Tri-Valley Herald distribution of the East Bay Times and the Valley Times distribution of the East Bay Times. Those are all publications of record. The press release was also picked up by the Livermore Independent November 22nd. new advertising, KKIQ, aired a campaign from November 20th through December 4th. For digital media, eco public hearing service medias were posted to the wheelsbus.com website. Individual landing pages were available in English, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, and Korean. Public comment is directly solicited on each language's landing page through a web form. Social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, were utilized with a pinned post for the duration of the campaign at the top of the Wheelsbus page. For community outreach, an announcement about public hearing was made at the accessibility advisory committee meeting. Flyers, as I mentioned, were distributed to all three cities' town halls, their senior centers, their libraries, and West Casitas College in English and Spanish with extra copies for redistribution. And a capacity general request release was issued. For public notices and displays, the interior of all Wheels buses had interior car parts, with public meetings and hearing dates. These were posted in both English and Spanish. The remaining languages available upon request. The LAVTA corporate office, display posters in the reception area, and the Livermore Transit Center displayed the same posters and on its kiosks on the transit platform. We provided many channels for feedback, which the public could participate. Some of these channels of communication were the aforementioned web form, email, telephone, fax, US mail, or a hard copy available at the transit center. Lastly, of course, is today's hearing for public input. As of December 4th, we had received 6 comments. All are favorable for the proposed scenario. 2 have suggestions regarding frequency of specific routes. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Any questions from the board before I go on to public comment?
Just the last time that we did something like this, do we have 6? Doesn't seem very high. Is that normal? Not normal?
Last time we did this was 2016, we had 230 comments. It was a much more significant change to the routes, and there were some controversial route changes, removing some routes and repurposing resources. I think that the 6 comments received really reflect that this is something that the community was supportive of. And there, we really didn't hear a lot of opposition during our Wheels in Motion outreach campaign in September. But thank you for that question.
Quick question. The Tri-Valley Herald and the Valley Times, are they still independent papers that fall under the Bay Times? Because I know I get a paper that says East Bay Times, and they used to be Mercury News, all these independent papers.
Sure. There used to be many different publications that were all publications of record. There's been a lot of consolidation in the newspaper industry. And so as newspapers were acquired, the city newspaper also gets the rights. So depending on the jurisdiction or the service delivery area for that paper, depending where you are, you might see one that says public notices, Tri-Valley Herald, and someone in a different distribution area would see public notices.
Oh, okay.
The newspaper is essentially the same newspaper.
Yes, it does, like, we're not writing 2 checks for the same thing. Okay, sounds great. My question for staff is, we have a required balance of the cities. And that is part of our original JPA, our original agreement. Do we still maintain that balance?
With the recommended changes that staff is advancing, we are closer to what the JIFA requires for balancing the resources, but we are not yet there. And we would present that in your action item in your January staff report. We can bring that back with the table.
How to run it?
We can certainly advance some ideas, but it would require significant cuts of service in Livermore and Pleasanton with additional service in Dublin in order to achieve that.
But we do have the Tri-Valley.
Yes,
Yes, so yeah, that helps balance it out. I don't know if Dublin feels differently, but they have something that's a little bit different, but still servicing the area.
Correct.
Servicing all 3 areas. Right, it started in Dublin primarily because of the surge fixed route areas, so I just want to make sure that we're good. Hearing none, okay, that's my comment.
Okay, so I will go ahead at this time. I will call for public testimony on the proposed as outlined. Please identify your name and address for the record and identify the route number you wish to comment on. We ask you to keep your comments to approximately 3 minutes. This one, do we have any public? Okay.
So there are people on Zoom as attendees. There are 3 people. If there's anybody that would like to speak on public comment right now, can you please raise your hand? Nobody's raising their hand. So is there anybody? Is there anything?
Mine was via email, but I wasn't sure it got distributed.
Well, you're here, you can,
Yeah, so I'll just say.
You wanna set the podium? thanks.
And just for clarification, all the email comments we received will be included as an attachment in your January staff report.
Good evening, Stephen Dunbar. This is about the whole system. It's not about any particular route, and I'm just gonna read the email straight. Dear Wheels Bus board members, after careful consideration, I'm in full support of the proposed changes. The improved coverage, transfer timing, and service hours, and the frequency changes are reasonable. While I understand the concerns about falling below the 15-minute frequency, I believe the overall travel times, rider comfort, and ease of use are just as important, if not more important, for attracting riders in the new post-COVID environment. They're not easy to measure, they matter. Improving them is about a lot of really small little actions here and there. It's about noise, it's about total travel time, it's about cutting 1 minute off the route, it's about making sure that we don't back up at the outlets because everyone's making cash. It's all these small things. It would be useful to target a survey towards those who stop riding and try to gather why they may have stopped riding, other than changes to office work, which makes a big part of it. I am concerned about the time needed to implement these changes. We're looking at Q2 coming forward. I know that they're planning on operational constraints and they're a small agency, but we need to be able to adapt more quickly. They're going to keep making changes in the future, making the system better. And so we got to be nimble in that regards. So I urge you to find a way to make our system more nimble and flexible. That can be to implement smaller route specific improvements that don't require this big public hearing. That can involve more tools for your planners here, external help when needed, or invite people that have expertise, and efficient driving, fair and efficient driver agreements and other benefits. I am very eagerly awaiting the service. I am afraid of the right park and mentioned better shape, and I look forward to that and other future improvements.
Any other comments?
I don't have any, however. On record with this stuff.
No, we'll attach those to the second one.
Fine. Decision is.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and, before closing public comment, I would like to ask the LAFTA legal counsel for a brief summary and description of the action required at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So staff has presented the purpose of this hearing, a brief description of the possible service changes, and has identified how the public is notified of these potential changes. You have afforded the public the required opportunity to comment on the proposed changes, and you have therefore satisfied all legal requirements. You may now proceed to close the public hearing.
Thank you. I will now close the public hearing. Thank you all very much for coming today. Thank you. And also sharing all of your thoughts. The board will consider taking action on the wheels motion recommendation changes at the January 2024 board meeting. Okay, so now that we've done, we've closed all that. We can just go forward and go away. So we'll go on to items number 7, which is the wheels in motion data request.
Thank you, Chair Hernandez. Mike Tobin will present this item. This is an information item in follow-up to some of the requests made at our last board meeting.
We have some slides.
We love that.
Yeah. So yeah, related to the public hearing, so at the November board meeting, as part of the motion to approve the public hearing, there was a caveat that staff come back and answer and address the concerns and questions that were laid by the board. And so that is the purpose of this item, is to come back and present some data, some responses, and answer any further questions that you might have. So next slide, please. So the first data point really has to do with these routes that are now being reintroduced as part of Wheels in Motion. This was a request put forth by Director Carl Brown, who wanted to kind of look at these routes and see, you know, prior to their discontinuation, how were they performing from a ridership and productivity perspective? And so that's exactly what we did, and so I just put all the routes here, and I also put the sort of the neighborhood that they service, as well as the year in which they were discontinued, so I'll just go quick. Route 2, that is in Dublin or Dublin Ranch. This was and the FY 2021, I believe, Cyrus, correct me if I'm wrong, they were all discontinued mid-pandemic, so around April of 2020. So route 2 was a pandemic discontinuation. Route 4, which was actually the northern segment of Route 3 in Central Dublin, was discontinued as part of the COA in FY 2016. Route 11, but this was another pandemic discontinuation. Route 11 serves Northeast Livermore. Route 580X is the commuter express route that provides service between East Dublin Park and Livermore Transit Center. This was another pandemic discontinued service. And last but not least, Route 18, which services South Livermore. This was actually discontinued a long time ago, back in FY 2012. So these are the routes, and if you go to the next slide, you'll actually see the first metric. So this slide shows you passengers per revenue hour for each of our routes. So just to kind of walk you through this slide, so boardings per service hour is essentially a ratio that compares ridership to the number of service hours being provided on that line. It's really a metric to show, is this a productive line or not? Is the amount of service we're providing for that line sort of commensurate with the ridership and the demand? So if you look here, the blue lines are the routes, these are actually routes that are operating currently. The green columns are routes that I just went over in the previous slide. They're being reintroduced into the system via Wheels of Motion. And so at the top of each column, you'll actually see the boardings per vehicle service hour. For the blue columns, the boarding per vehicle service hour, that's their FY 23 number. So as of June of this year. And then the green number is actually just the boarding per vehicle service hour for that route for the last month it was in operation. And then the orange line is actually the system-wide number for all of our current routes. So that number excludes school trippers, and that system-wide number is 8.6. So you can kind of compare where all these routes are to that system-wide average. So you can see if we look at the green columns, Route 2 is actually higher than the current system-wide average of 8.6. The other routes that are being reintroduced, while they're kind of considerably less than that system-wide average, there is still demand. They are still productive, and so they're also on par with some of the routes that we're operating today. So if we reintroduce these routes, we won't see empty buses, we won't maybe see full buses, but there will be people riding these routes. And again, the public commented and voted on coverage, and so this is why we wanted to show this slide. We believe these routes would be productive. And of course, once we implement this, we'll be monitoring on an ongoing basis and see if we'll see that, this is what.
I have a quick question.
Sure, yeah.
Why, what's the reasoning behind taking school trippers out of the data set?
Right, because the ridership is so high and the service hours provided is so low, it kind of skew the number.
Yeah.
And so we just don't want to, and you'll see the next slide, I take out our rapid routes. You really want to compare apples to apples, and it really helps. So that's why we took.
The one that Sunset Granada,
Yes.
would that be servicing a school? So,
If they're in the school,
yeah, so would,
but it's not a school tripper route. It actually,
Okay.
is a fixed route service where our school tripper route, they are dedicated to school trip. They do
Okay.
1 or 2 trips in the morning, 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
perfect, that makes sense, thank you so much.
Okay, next slide. This is another ridership metric. This one I don't believe to be as helpful, but it does tell a different side of the story. If you look at this route, I actually excluded our rapid routes, if you couldn't tell, because the ridership is so much, it would skew this number and make this chart almost meaningless. So I took those out of the equation here. So this is average weekday boardings, essentially how many people are riding that line on any given weekday. Again, the orange line is the average for all of these routes. I think it's about 200. I don't have the exact number. But then again, the blue columns, those are routes that are operating today. The green routes are routes that are being reintroduced. You can see the 14 and 15, as well as the rapid routes. Those are what I call our bread and butter routes. Those are really productive, high ridership lines. But then you have all these other routes that do, they don't have as many boardings or don't make up a huge chunk of our ridership, but we still have people relying on them to get to work, it's medical appointments, to, shop within the Tri-Valley. So they are important nonetheless. But again, to me, not as insightful as the last slide, but it does show a different. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, does the system-wide average include the rapid routes? then?
It must.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't adjust that, thank you, I was trying to put it together. But yeah, so it'll probably be much.
Yeah.
Thank you. We wait or anyway, okay. So yet another data point we wanted to include in this, again, just to tell a full story here is, with the software we have, we're actually able to go in and for these proposed routes, look at sort of the population and the job market that these routes would actually serve. And so using the software, we took a look at each of these routes we reintroduced, and we looked at a quarter-mile radius on either side of the route alignment. And you can see in the first table on the left-hand side, we have a breakdown by route of the population within that quarter-mile radius, and then also the jobs within that quarter-mile radius. And then if you look at the right-hand table, we actually have the same data, but for a system-wide perspective. And you can see, so currently, our current system, all of our routes within a quarter-mile radius, we have 97,900 people residing within a quarter-mile radius. And then we have 51,000 per job. By introducing these new routes, we actually expand that. So the population of people residing and within a quarter-mile of the route increases 130,800 people. The jobs increases to almost 61,000. So again, we just wanted to include this because it does paint a different picture about the productivity and its routes.
Another question. Just, quarter mile buffer decision is just walkability, guesstimate.
The transit best practice for like how far someone would walk to a bus stop.
We said it first mile last.
Yeah, great.
Okay, next slide. And then we had another concern that was raised by Director Josie, and this is in regards to a lack of transit service in West Dublin. And so, this was discussed, and West Dublin is really this low density, single family housing. And so the demand, I don't think is really there to have a fixed route bus running frequently. However, this is a ubiquitous challenge about the transit industry. And so there are solutions out there, there are options that could be explored or potentially be explored. And so those were all listed in the staff report, and I'm more than willing to go into detail about that. Numerous, conferences, and I mean, even the city I was at, Culver City, we implemented a downtown circulator. But so these are the three kind of potential options. So one is, of course, a circulator shuttle in West Dublin. So this is really, they're smaller vehicles, dedicated minivans, generally, or shuttles that run high frequency, short distance loops in sort of these low demand areas. There are benefits, challenges associated with each of these options, but circulators do seem to they're becoming more prevalent, I believe, in the industry, so it is definitely an option. Next, you have demand response. So this is really similar to what we're doing with Go Tri-Valley, but essentially with microtransit, we would have our own dedicated vans or minivans that would then provide on-demand trips, so trips that are scheduled in advance. It's flexible, it's dynamic, and it does help with addressing some of those low demand areas. And then of course, a mixture of the two is flex routing. This one, not as prevalent, but it's gaining some traction, but this is sort of using your existing fixed route resources, but then dynamically routing them into neighborhoods to pick folks up. And there's all kinds of caveats. So this person would have to, schedule the route deviation in advance. They would be charged a premium, and you have to guarantee it's not going to affect any of the other people riding on the bus. So a bit more challenging, but again, there's software out there that does help you kind of provide this technical service. So again, we're not committed to anything at this point. We just wanted to kind of throw out some ideas, and so that's what's coming.
Didn't we just put a route out there on West Dublin about 2 to 3 years ago?
We put a school tripper route out to Shaper Ridge. Yep, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think we're not talking that far west. I think we're talking maybe west of 680. And I think we don't know how the ridership will what the ridership results will be, if the board approves our new network, and, the Route 4 could be much more productive than it used to be, because it's a different alignment. It used to be a one-way loop that took you all the way through Pleasanton if you wanted to get back to Dublin, and so, I think we'll be watching the routes very closely, and we may come back to this board, after, 6 to 12 months with some recommendations for changes, depending on how we see the ridership. And it could be advancing something different, for Dublin or even Pleasanton or Dublin.
That concludes my presentation. If you're taking additional questions.
Okay, for sure.
Sure. To Steve Dunbar's comment, you start making these changes, you've got to go through a whole public process. So let's try our best to get it right, obviously. If you go back to the bar chart, the first bar chart you showed, and I think it was Route 4, it's three riders an hour. One more, there you go. That's a lot of empty bus time. Let's say a bus ride is 15 minutes. And they're just sitting there empty.
So this one's interesting because the 4 was technically the 3. And Cyrus, you maybe Cyrus here is our resident historian, and might have some better
This
insight.
don't even have, yeah.
You want
Used to be 3. 3 was better, former.
So the old 3 used to be a bigger loop, and
Through
the
Pleasanton.
part and the part that we eliminated, we are now recommending to reintroduce as Route 4.
I think it's hopefully Dublin, the central Dublin will really pick up some riders there.
But can I make a comment over that?
Yeah.
Point? If you look at the 2 slides later than this, at the jobs and population, this was eliminated in 2016. The rapidity with which Dublin has changed. There are a lot, right, the jobs and the people that live in that area are not the same people that lived there before. And so it will be, I don't think you can make that comparison from 2016 to now and really have any accurate prediction as to who's gonna be on that bus. So looking at this and saying, really, why are we restoring a route that only has this many riders per hour? I think that the prediction game would be losing that right now. So watching to see what happens on that school is gonna be
Thanks for making
interesting.
my point for that was basically a little bit what I was gonna say, but the change in route serving central Dublin should hopefully bring that number up, which follows on the question, really for our executive director. Based on Mike's data and all these jobs surrounding our routes, how much outreach are we doing? We've talked about it in the past. It really did get a salesperson or somebody that's out there outreaching. Got a company right across and did a quarter mile of a wheels bus. We're going to reintroduce this route. It's going to be, let's use it. Let's use it. Because we talked about employers helping to fund bus tickets or bus passes. Hacienda has a contract. If you have a business in Hacienda, your employee gets to ride the bus as part of the program because it's paid into the system. So, I mean, I just like to see some ridership. It's been my consistent message is to get ridership up. Obviously, COVID is a whole game changer, but I'm sure everybody here hears the message that I see these buses and they're going by and other than the school shippers, which I know are really important, but just to continue to drive that. And then I'll just also comment about the 580X, which is over there to the right. And the reason 580X for this board has always been controversial is it leaves, the Dublin Pleasanton BART station goes all the way up into Walnut Creek, way out of our service area. And so it's one I know I've always watched 7.4 per hour. Did I understand that correctly?
It's the
580 is going down.
Yeah,
580.
it's the 70,
The
yeah.
70,
Yes, yes.
2.8.
Yeah.
Thank you. Leaving our service area and going way up out of our service area. I don't know how many are coming back, or it's a one-way, but 3.8 on a full-size bus per hour. It's just hard for me to justify that. So you're able to justify it because you have new data like a route change. Or to pick up some of our riders somehow, because BART ridership is still very low. You're not gonna pick up a lot of BART riders.
If I could respond to that, I think the 70X is a unique route. It is a round trip service. So we are both taking people from Dublin Pleasanton up north, also bringing people, we actually see more people coming from the Walnut Creek to our service area. So this number, the 3.8, is a reflection of today's service level. The 70X used to run more trips pre-pandemic. we would be restoring a little bit more frequency. So we do know, history tells us that frequency does tend to have a positive influence on ridership. Another positive change for this route is, we are proposing to extend it into Hacienda. Like it used to operate, it used to do some minor circulation through Hacienda. So today, a person would have to find that last mile if they're coming from Walnut Creek to Hacienda. That bus terminates at Dublin Pleasanton Park. So we think with some great marketing, and your point is not lost, we have to knock it out of the park with our marketing campaign. We have a great consultant team under contract to help us do that. And we can maybe bring something back to your January projects and services with a preliminary campaign on how to get the word out and the outreach activities that we're planning on doing. And the 70X does serve a very critical missing transit link on the 680 corridor. It's one of the county connection and LAVTA we talk about. And we actually have received some grant funding to purchase capital equipment to run that future service between Martinez and Dublin Pleasanton. So I am very curious to see how the 70X, if we can see some ridership bounce back. If we don't, we may be recommending modifications to that route in partnership with County Connection.
Once you said you're coming into Hacienda, is that a prescribed route that you expect to pick up riders? I mean, it's not just a loop, but you're communicating with businesses there saying, you have a bus here and you love it.
We will be working with James on that, and I don't know the routing off the top of my head, but yes, it is some circulation in Hacienda designed to bring people who just want to go that last quarter, half mile.
We just got 1,200 new Kaiser employees.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots going on, so, okay, I'm gonna make sure I got all of my notes. And then finally, shuttles or micro transit, is that if you were to add microtransit or something like that, are you taking away from your Uber Lyft users? I mean, are you routing from one to get to the other if you went that route? Or would you phase out one to increase usage of the other? And I know this is hypothetical because you're not there yet. What are your thoughts?
Well, do you, if you want, I think Mike and I are on the same page. I think we are seeing significant ridership gains with the Uber Lyft Go Tri-Valley. I think we would like to see some adjustments made to curtail that. I think the funding that is being spent on that is sufficient enough, if we pulled it back, to spend that on a different innovative service like a microtransit. Yes, so we certainly don't want to cannibalize our own riders, both from the fixed route or Uber Lyft or microtransit. So the answer I think is yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
All right, I mean, that goes with responsibility of the cities too, I mean, with Hacienda, with regards to marketing, I know that it should be primarily on LAVTA, but Hacienda's been struggling for a while, but I mean, James, to be able to even advocate to any businesses that go in there, I know that, is it Stanford that bought some, they buy in that area?
They bought 4 more buildings, 5 buildings, but they have a Hacienda newsletter. I don't know if there's a cost to be in it. So there is ways to disperse the information. And I'm sure they will use that, but it's also a little bit of a push to HR because it's very passive to just read it in a newsletter versus a corporation buy into a program. So thanks.
We don't get the data on the school troopers.
We did not include those for this report. We are happy to bring that back to you. The school troopers were not a part of the Wheels in Motion service planning exercise. We kind of peeled those off and focused on our local routes. And so that is the data that we brought back, was just the local service.
I've been asking for the school trooper data for a long time. And it concerns me to see routes that have 3 riders per hour when we have incredibly overcrowded school buses that we're saying, oh gee, sorry, there's nothing we can do. I mean, to the level that children are opting to sit on the floor in buses because they don't feel safe, but we have buses and multiple that are basically without ridership. I don't understand that. I'd like to have a real report on that.
So on the being a little bit more nimble going forward. As we're talking about, getting data back, and we'll get updates as we see what the ridership looks like. What what level of service change requires the full public hearing process versus something that can just be approved at a single board meeting or,
That's a wonderful question.
you know, where's the line?
25% increase or decrease in the routes, hours or miles on a given service day. So if you are adjusting, I think that's what it is, which is good.
And that's where
It
it's
protects
per line.
the staff or protect the public from staff just willy-nilly like eliminating weekend service. But it is a 25% change in a route's miles or hours necessitates a public hearing.
Okay, so if we're doing minor tweaks, that's fine.
Yes.
And does that apply also to the like micro transit we're talking about, either shuttle service or?
I have to look, our Title VI plan, I don't think, addresses microtransit as we didn't have that operating.
I don't think with demand responsive service is really big work. Whoever calls on a particular day.
Yeah.
My understanding is it's significant changes to existing service.
It's fixed line routes
fixed routes.
that are made, yeah, okay.
And then my only comment I would put there is the real challenge I perceive in the coming future is we're constantly gonna be reacting to BART. We just found out they just changed their schedule again by 1 minute. Is that right, Cyrus? And they're supposedly making large changes in their service change next August. And so while that won't necessarily trigger a Title VI change, it will create a lot of work for, you know, Cyrus over here. So I did just want to make that nice.
Time shifts though, that wouldn't
No,
trigger.
no,
Sounds good, thank you, and then, yeah, keep the data coming, because I think we've got a lot to consider in 6 months to a year.
I just wanted to piggyback on it's very difficult to be nimble with changes this large. However, the amount that communities change in 6 months, based on we've been through a pandemic and we see how in 1 month, there's nobody going anywhere. So, you know, keeping those system changes more frequent and smaller, I would agree is a good plan. Obviously, we're talking about things that were taken away either a long time ago or due to very unforeseen circumstances. So I think that makes sense here, but I just think it would be as the fewer public hearings we can have for changes, the better. Not that we don't want public input, but it takes, by the time they give us a decision, then when we implement it, maybe they change their mind, as the world has changed. Yeah, so.
Okay, we do have a public comment.
Members with their hand up. Herb, you can go ahead and start your public comment. Herb?
Okay, I'm here. Hi, everyone. It's been a while, a long time. Not to tell you the whole story, but you can hear from Christy why I've been disappearing. But I have a question regarding the updated services. I sent to Carla and Christy. Did you inform the TAC in the previous months? Since I've been out of town, I don't know what's been the topics for the last several months of the agendas. I'm kind of like coming out of the closet just to figure out what's going on. So did you guys go to the TAC during this last year with these proposed intended changes of the services? I do appreciate the 18 coming back. That's been a long time coming. So yeah, could you answer that quick, Christy? Could you tell me this story? What's the story about giving it to the TAC?
Hi, Herb. Yes, of course, we went to the TAC. We presented to them before we even launched our official public outreach campaign. So I think they got their presentation in September before Labor Day. We came back to them in November, their November meeting just a month ago, and they are enthusiastically supportive of scenario 3.
Okay. And then I do like the idea of trying to figure out some idea about your West Dublin thing. I'm glad the Dublin mayor, I believe, is the one. I haven't met her yet, so I'm still trying to get into that place. Increasing that service area. How about bringing out the autonomous vehicle?
Thank you, Herb. I'm not gonna, it was actually Councilmember Josie, but we have to make sure we have the ridership before we move forward, but thank you for your comments.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And I'll get in touch with you guys again when I have issues.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
guys. Have a nice holiday.
you too. We have another public comment. And the person's name is, go ahead.
It's Armand Risby.
Armar, are you there?
Armand? You
Hi,
can speak.
yeah, sorry. Hi, my name is Armand Rizvi, and I'm here to share my thoughts on the proposed changes. I appreciate that Wheels is taking steps to move away from the 9 to 5 commuter dependent model and working to improve connections with other agencies to make transit more useful for everyone. Timing to align with BART is a really important part of making the region accessible to everyone. And I appreciate that Wheels is increasing 10-hour and 30-hour frequencies on Saturdays. But it's disheartening to see that Wheels isn't doing more to improve its notoriously inadequate weekend service. The lack of Sunday service on the 4 and the complete absence of any weekend service on the 2 and 18 is unfair to riders in Dublin and Livermore who have been underserved by transit for years. And the reduction of service on the 10-hour to every 40 minutes on Sundays will hurt the local economies of Pleasanton and Livermore. Instead of promoting Go Tri-Valley, Wheels should run service on the 2, 4, and 18 all weekend, at least at a reduced frequency. Subsidized Uber and Lyft is not a substitute for actual transit service. It's expensive for people who have lower incomes, and it's inaccessible to people who don't have smartphones. Upgrading weekend service while also expanding coverage will make it easier to use transit and make Wheels a model agency for the region on how to improve suburban bus service. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we also have a public comment from Stephen Lewis.
Hi again, just reacting a little bit to some ideas we're all setting out. On changes, of course, I don't need to say that we're going to change the entirety of the route. There are small nits I have in my head that we're not really changing where the route the bus stops are. I'll speed the service up. Or to the point about Uber and Lyft, when we first launched that program, it was my understanding that it would basically become a connection with transit, right? It was supposed to support transit overall. Lyft did for a short time come out with a program that allowed you to use Lyft that would give you combined directions for take the Lyft to BART or take the Lyft to downtown Livermore and take the express. They never rolled that out in any significant capacity. It was there for about a week in beta. And that's really what I was looking for. That never really came past. When I'm coming in on BART, even when I want to take Lyft because I'm after service hours, there's no way for me to schedule the Lyft, so it shows up when I have to BART. I have to wait till I get there, and then I have to wait 25 minutes to get the Lyft after I'm there, or I have to risk that the Lyft takes off out. So I don't think that's working. I do think that repurposing there may work out really well because it's designed to integrate with transit, and there are a lot of really clever apps that you can use these days that give you those combined directions of a micro transit vehicle into a public transit service. And I know transit has some examples of that. On a related note, the idea that popped in my head was for the 70X and Hacienda service, you might consider doing that flex routing for the 70X around Hacienda. There are ways that it shows up in the transit app such that you can book it there. And so it doesn't become a really headache on the back end for people to access. And the employers you might get that, how do we schedule which employer picks up that? People are just scheduling an account on that. Those are some thoughts.
Any other public?
Are there any other attendees that would like to speak? Please raise your hand. No. Okay, you didn't do anything via email, right?
All right, and this is just an informational item, so an action is required at this time. And then you'll go ahead and go. Item number 8.
Okay, great, thank you,
Shared
Sharon.
autonomous vehicle.
Speaking of the shared autonomous
Public
vehicles, this is an action item for the board today. This may be a bit repetitive for our projects and services committee members. You did receive a detailed report at your committee meeting, but I think due to the high profile nature of our SAB project, it warranted a discussion at the board. Today, staff are requesting that the board officially direct staff to pursue reprogramming the shared autonomous vehicle phase 2 regional measure 2 monies or funding to another eligible project contingent on the concurrence of our funding agencies, which are Alameda CTC as our project sponsor and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. So very high level summary, not to bore the project and services committee members, but for the past year, staff has really been working on this project to better understand the trajectory, to better understand the funding requirements and the funding constraints. And at the October Projects and Services Committee meeting, staff presented the results of a request for information that we issued to the SAB world, if you will, to better understand what technology was available for purchase and whether it met our requirements for our SAB project. We presented the results to the committee, and the results were that there are no vehicles that are available today that meet our requirements of autonomy, electric, and at least 25 miles an hour operating speed. So given that that there was no technology we could purchase with our grant funding, the committee felt comfortable with ending the project. And so staff returned to the committee in November to request official direction to direct staff to work with our funding partners to redirect or repurpose the money. And the committee was agreeable, very high level. We have 2 grants that are supporting this project. The first is an IDEA grant. This is in partnership with the City of Dublin, really to support the systems engineering and the concept of operations. That funding has a very hard deadline of the end of this calendar year. It cannot be extended. We have been working with the City of Dublin staff and have submitted a proposal to MTC to close out that grant. MTC has accepted that proposal, so we are working on that. The second and the more significant funding is attached to the RM2 program. We have about $2.7 million that was allocated to the SAB project. A very small amount was to design the mobility hub near the Zeiss and Ross business centers. The remaining balance, about $2.5 million, was to purchase the 3 SABs. And so this funding from the RM2 project is $2.7 million, as I mentioned, and it has to be used on a capital project in the 580 corridor that relieves congestion. So with the board's concurrence, staff would work with Alameda CTC staff and MTC staff to pursue reprogramming the $2.7 million to an eligible project, and staff are considering transit signal priority, upgrading our current GPS-based system to a cloud-based system, and we'll also be exploring additional bus stop enhancements in the corridor. So with that, I can take any questions from the board.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Sorry, your signal priorities for all 3 cities?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes, we have current about 60 intersections throughout the 3 cities with transit signal priority. We would be upgrading those and possibly expanding to other locations. So I already have a line into Mike Tisano to talk to him.
Do you service the county at all?
Unincorporated Alameda County. I don't think so with the TSP system, but I will check on that.
I just want to make sure if there is any to also relate the county. That's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor Halbert, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to say and reiterate my comments at the projects and services meeting that I know we put a good effort into this. I do think it was the right thing to do at the time. I do think it's the future. It's just not here now. And I'm glad that we're going to make better use of these funds, and we'll be supporting, if needed, requesting that our funding sponsors agree with this shift. So thank you for bringing this item at this time. As bittersweet as it is, I think it's probably the right thing to do. Thank you.
it's difficult to be able to give funding away when, we have these great intentions of the SAB, and it's unfortunate, but I'm sure with technology in the next few years, something else will hopefully, be coming forward, so thank you. Not seeing any other public comments, it's executive. We should really do speaker splits.
We do have some.
Okay,
Things
but then it's easier for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Thank you. Just to really briefly say, I'm very much in support of this. Value per dollar for the remainder of this grant to do this is very high, and not ironically, if SAB comes back, we will be able to signal priority those shared vehicles.
Yeah, that was, I just remember us at ACTC, I don't want to go back and forth, but we were fighting for funding for the SAB, so. Thank you. That's the last public speaker. Thank you.
Are you looking for, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to pursue a reprogramming of the shared autonomous vehicle funding.
I'll second.
Roll call, Vice Chair Browning.
Aye.
Director Brown.
Yes.
Director Halbert.
Aye.
Director Josie. Yes. Director Testa.
Yes.
Director K. Yes. And Chairman Lewis.
Hi,
Motion please.
thank you. It's all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I will give you the executive director's report. Starting off with your ridership, we are still seeing ridership gains year over year, although we saw a slight reduction in average weekday ridership from October compared to September. So I haven't talked to staff about that, but I'm a little intrigued as to why we saw a little bit of a dip in ridership. So I'll be digging into that. I do like looking at the average weekday ridership. That does help compare apples to apples when you're looking at your system-wide totals.
Is that what the Thanksgiving week?
Well, this was October compared to September. So I don't know,
trick or treaters riding the bus.
and I don't know if it's raining.
Walking.
Yeah, so I don't know, it's perplexing, so I'm just gonna dig into it a little bit and see what we,
Took an illness meeting.
what I can find. We have,
I was gonna say, were we doing the free passes for students?
that ended in early September.
I love it.
So no, yeah, it's a great idea. So I'm just gonna look just to see if there are any things that stuck out route by route. Next Monday, or actually this Saturday, we are implementing a very minor service change, not that qualifies for a major service change in a public hearing. But due to like high ridership on our 501 routes at Dublin High School, and this is what, we have high ridership and then we have unsafe ridership levels. And unsafe ridership levels are when we see that load of 1.5, the seated capacity consistently being exceeded. And we have been seeing 65 students per bus regularly on our afternoon 501s. We were able to find a bus that is, I think, doing a Pleasanton school tripper that would be deadheading back to the yard. We are able to keep that bus in service and run a later, so a second 501 trip, approximately 30 minutes after the bell time. So we will be messaging that to Dublin High, making sure students know that that's an option, but that will take effect next Monday, but technically this Saturday. And sticking with our school trippers, first I want to acknowledge Director Testa. I know you have requested ridership information for the school trippers, and we can bring that back to this board in January. We have the data, and I apologize for not bringing it back to you sooner. We did want to return to this board with a very high-level summary of your customer satisfaction for your school trippers. So you may recall we presented our customer satisfaction, and it was just for our mainline routes. So we have a memo we can send to the board, but in summary, the school trippers or those who responded, who were riding the school trippers, did give us strong marks, although they are a little bit lower than our mainline routes. And we are about right exactly where we were the last time we surveyed our school tripper riders. We were at a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being outstanding, 1 being you really need improvement. We are at a 4.2 this year, and we were at a 4.21 in 2019. So tiny little decrease. Noteworthy, our highest score, 4.4, was observed in passengers feeling safe while riding the bus and the friendliness and helpfulness of our staff. On the other hand, they gave lower ratings for the friendliness of bus drivers, which is also interesting. This is also why it's a challenge to survey young people, and 3.7 for buses operating on time. So I think this again is, our buses arriving late at school, or is there a perception that they're arriving late? We have room for improvement, as we do everywhere. We are going to continue to address safety concerns where we see them, especially unsafe loads. Currently, we don't see any other unsafe loads in the system. We do see full buses. We see pretty fully seated loads. We actually just pulled Pleasanton ridership for a request from the Pleasanton PTA. And we do see buses most of the buses are full seated capacity, but none of the buses that we looked at in Pleasanton are at unsafe loads. But we will still bring that data back for discussion at this.
Can I ask for clarification?
Sure.
I'm not familiar. How many riders, what's the capacity on them?
It varies depending on the bus that's assigned, but typically a 40-foot bus has between 34 and 39 seats. And your capacity per your Title VI plan is 1.5 times the seated load. So on a 40-foot bus, it could be 51 up to, and I can't do the math, 39 times
Just under
1.5.
60.
60, thank you. So on average, 51 to 60 students is an acceptable load, depending on the vehicle type. And we don't always assign the same bus type to the route, but we do our very best to get 40-foot buses out there because we really can't operate with anything smaller.
So over 60 would be your unsafe.
Yeah, consistently seeing over 60 passengers would be an unsafe load, and that would be the point in which staff would be looking at options to make a recommendation.
Do we know what the same equivalence would be for school buses?
I can definitely look into that. I don't believe school buses tolerate any standees. I don't think they are equipped or manufactured for that. They actually have seatbelts, very different type of vehicle. They have a stop sign that deploys and different rules, but I'm happy to take a look.
All right, thanks.
And so in conclusion, we will continue to look at ridership and on-time performance. Right now, we're just watching to make sure buses have safe loads and that students are getting to school on time. So we'll continue to be monitoring that. Moving on to holiday festivities. This Wednesday, we are having our operator and mechanic appreciation lunch. And I know many of you can't make it, but if you are able to come out and help us serve food to our workforce, we would be very happy to have you. I think Supervisor Hobart said he's gonna come and carve the turkey, right?
2,000.
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be able to do that.
Oh, okay, public shaming.
I'll be at back mid for most of the day. If I can get away early.
All right, well, we'll save you a plate of food. Sorry. Either way, it's fun. We're cooking 2 turkeys. It should be a good event. And then we were in 2 parades this last weekend in the Livermore Holiday Sights and Sounds, and then the Pleasanton parade. I think staff have walked away thinking we absolutely need to put lights on the buses for the future parades. And so that will be next year.
No lights?
I know. So
Well, we have street lights.
Yeah.
And the
You guys
bus
had like 20, how many people were part of your actual parade?
It was estimated that attendees were about 3,000.
That's great.
We had 80, we were 70.
We got a note from PPD that said 10,000 today. Kurt sent something today.
All right, well, UPD said 10,000. It was
Yeah.
to me a record crowd.
It was
But everybody
amazing.
loved the John Mack.
And David Mark was on board. People wanted to honk. So it was great. Everyone loves that bus. And then we are doing our annual toy drive in partnership with KKIQ. It's on the 15th of December. We are starting at the Stone Ridge Mall from 10 to 2, and then the bus will roll to the Livermore Transit Center. And we are offering a free ride ticket in exchange for a donated toy, unwrapped. And
Christy, I did just send you the photo of a bus that was in a Christmas parade down in Southern California. It was sent to me. You can take a look. You'll be surprised.
listen, I want a snowmaker on board on top of the next bus. That's all I'm saying. So,
I support that.
So to find a place for the generator. Moving into finance and admin, we are going to revamp, refresh your board statistics. They've looked the same for years. I can't read the charts. I think that it's deserving of a refresh, and so staff will be coming in the new year with some ideas for you to weigh in on. In addition, I'd like to start including our marketing, social media posts that we do. We're also going to be starting either a newsletter or a blog, some type of a 3 to 6 month, here's what we did and here's what we're doing, newsletter that we can issue to the community. BART feeder bus funding. So you may recall that BART has signaled their intent to reduce or eliminate the BART feeder bus money that LAVTA and 3 other small bus operators receive. We don't receive too much funding. This year it's about $650,000. It's a significant funding source for both Tri-Delta Transit and WestCat. They receive $2.5 to $3 million. So we've been trying to work with BART and MTC to understand what is the trajectory for this funding and what funding can we identify to replace it, because it is a very critical piece of funding that does support bringing people to BART from areas that don't have a BART station. So BART sent us a letter on November 13th that indicated their intent to continue the funding, provided they are made whole, through fiscal 26. So we have at least 2.5 years of funding, which is we appreciate that. But we still need to vigorously advocate for a long-term funding source, which we will continue to do. So I just wanted to share that bit of good news with this board. Also, in the vein of finding funding, CalSTA, California State Transportation or Transit, is convening a transit transformation task force. This is a statewide task force comprised of 20 individuals representing CalSTA, various local agencies, academic institutions, transit agencies, and whatnot. And this would be to develop policy recommendations on how to grow ridership and improve the transit experience for all users. I submitted my name to this task force. I don't know if I will be selected, but I do think I'm a uniquely qualified candidate because I'm kind of a geek and I have a lot of technical experience. And now I have this wonderful position of leadership. And so we have 2 small operators who submitted for this task force, and we joke we have the same haircut. So we figure either one of us can be picked. And we can just, we can sub in as we need to. So it's Kate Miller from Napa. So anyway, I will let you all know if I'm lucky to be selected. If not, we will work diligently through our representatives to influence that task force. And we are preparing for 2 procurements. One will be for our agency's auditing services. The second will be to procure on-call graphic design, marketing, market research, and advertising support. We are still looking at advocacy, state and federal advocacy and lobbying services. That may be a mini RFP just to get us through this year. And then we might do a more comprehensive one, even considering a coalition with County Connection. And in your packet, you have your revised statistics from September. There were some errors, I believe Mayor Marchand pointed out in our packet, and those have been corrected, and your stats are reissued to you. Your October stats, again, we see increase in year-over-year ridership, but a slight decrease in average weekday from September. So I'm going to look into that. And at the end, we are still seeing increase in the Go Tri-Valley usage, 16% increase from September. So we are eagerly awaiting to present to our Projects and Services Committee in January some options to pull that. And we've had very productive meetings with both project partners, Uber and Lyft. They're all very amenable to whichever direction we want to go.
One of those with me, and I'll tell you, it was super easy.
Are you our super user?
I am not the super user. It was the first time I'd done it, and
it's very easy.
It was very easy.
They make it very easy.
They make it very easy.
And that was my report, and I can take any questions for Christy.
Yeah, matters initiated by the board of directors. Any matters? All today. Then our next meeting will be on January 8th, 2024. Have a great holiday, and also happy new year. Meeting adjourned at 5:10.
Christie?